Pam Bondi walked onto Stephen Colbert's stage, her dress contrasting with the vibrant set of The Late Show. The former Florida Attorney General's confident smile masked the tension in the air as millions watched at home. Just moments earlier, Colbert had introduced her with a sharp jab. Tonight, we have Trump's defender, who seems to have forgotten her oath to the Constitution. The liberal audience erupted in laughter and applause while Bondi's jaw tightened. Colbert, with his signature smirk and designer suit, was sure this interview would be another easy takedown of a Trump supporter. But Bondi, with decades of legal experience and unwavering conviction, saw this as her chance to flip the script on national television. She wasn't here to be Colbert's punching bag. She was here to fight back. What happened next left Colbert fumbling for words, the audience gasping, and social media exploding in shock. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong. It was the moment Pam Bondi turned the tables on one of late night's most powerful voices. Before we dive into this incredible confrontation, make sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss our latest political showdowns and untold stories from behind the scenes of American politics. The studio lights beamed down on Stephen Colbert as he paced the stage during his monologue, landing joke after joke about conservative politicians to uproarious laughter from his devoted audience. The 59-year-old host had built his career on political satire, evolving from the Colbert Report to become a mainstream voice that millions of liberal Americans trusted and admired. Tonight, his show was trending as usual, his confidence at an all-time high. And now, let me introduce our guest, Colbert announced, his voice taking on an edge. She served as Florida's Attorney General, defended Trump during his first impeachment, and recently claimed the 2020 election had irregularities. Please welcome, if you can, Pam Bondi. The audience's applause was mixed with murmurs and a few boos as Bondi walked out. At 56, she carried herself with the authority of someone who had argued before the Supreme Court and led major legal battles. Her blonde hair framed a face that remained composed despite entering what many conservatives called the liberal lion's den. Bondi wasn't just any Trump supporter. She had built a reputation as a tough prosecutor who took on human trafficking and drug crimes before becoming Florida's first female attorney general. Recently, she had been speaking out about election integrity issues, making her a target for late-night comedians like Colbert. The stakes couldn't be higher for both. For Colbert, this was another opportunity to mock Trump's allies and energize his base before the upcoming midterms. For Bondi, this represented a chance to defend conservative values on a platform typically hostile to her viewpoint. The entire conservative movement was watching to see if she could hold her ground or would become another victim of Colbert's sharp wit. As they shook hands, the tension was palpable. Colbert's smile didn't reach his eyes, and Bondi's grip was firm. Neither was backing down before the verbal sparring had even begun. Pam, thanks for coming into the what do you guys call it? The Lion's Den. Colbert started, emphasizing the phrase with air quotes as his audience chuckled. I go anyway to speak truth, Stephen. Even here, Bondi replied smoothly, settling into her chair as the audience reacted with surprised oohs. Colbert raised an eyebrow, realizing this might not be the easy interview he had anticipated. Millions watching at home leaned forward, sensing the brewing confrontation between two skilled communicators representing America's deepening political divide. So, Pam Colbert began, leaning forward in his chair. You defended a president who was impeached twice. You stood outside courtrooms claiming election fraud without evidence. How do you square that with being a former attorney general who once took an oath to uphold the law? The audience applauded vigorously, and Colbert's smirk grew wider, having thrown his first real punch, framing Bondi as a hypocrite before she could even establish her position. Bondi nodded slightly, unfazed. That's an interesting way to start a conversation, Stephen. I took an oath to the Constitution, not to a political party. That's exactly why I've spoken up when I saw concerns about election integrity. Any good prosecutor questions when processes don't seem right. Processes don't seem right. Colbert repeated with exaggerated disbelief. 60 court cases found no evidence of widespread fraud. Your guy lost fair and square. The audience cheered loudly. If you'd let me finish, Bondi said calmly, her legal training evident as she refused to be rattled. Those cases were dismissed on procedural grounds, not after evidence was examined. But I'm happy to talk about why I'm really here tonight. The border crisis and fentanyl killing thousands of Americans. Colbert waved his hand dismissively. We'll get to your talking points later. I'm more interested in how someone with your legal background ends up as a what should we call it? A defender of conspiracy theories. The audience laughed and a few clapped. The camera caught Bondi's momentary flash of frustration before her expression returned to professional composure. That's a serious accusation from someone who spent years pushing Russian collusion theories that were debunked by the Mueller report. Bondi countered, her voice steady. I'm not here to trade insults, Stephen. I thought your viewers deserved an actual conversation. The audience grew quieter, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't following the usual script where Colbert dominated conservative guests with humor and his audience's backing. Colbert's smile tightened as he adjusted his glasses. The Mueller report that led to multiple indictments and convictions. That report, he looked to his audience for support, receiving scattered applause. The report that specifically stated no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion was found, Bondi replied. But again, I'd rather discuss issues affecting Americans right now than rehash political narratives. Colbert, sensing he wasn't landing the blows he expected, shifted tactics. Fine, let's talk about your recent work, then. You've been appearing on networks claiming the Biden administration is deliberately failing at the border. Do you really believe there's some grand conspiracy to let in criminals? It's not a conspiracy when it's happening in plain sight, Bondi said, her voice becoming more passionate. I've been to the border. I've talked with Border Patrol agents whose hands are tied by policies from Washington. This isn't partisan. It's a humanitarian and security crisis. Yet, your solution is just build the wall and separate families. Colbert shot back, his tone growing sharper. That's a straw man argument, and you know it, Bondi replied, straightening in her chair. No one advocates separating families. We want legal immigration and border security. The current situation helps no one. Not Americans, not legal immigrants, not the people being trafficked by cartels. The tension in the studio was mounting. Colbert's usual rhythm was disrupted by Bondi's refusal to be flustered. He glanced at his notes, then decided to go for a more personal attack. You know what's interesting? Colbert said, his voice taking on a mocking tone. You present yourself as this champion of law and order, but weren't you criticized for taking a $25,000 donation from Trump's foundation around the time your office decided not to pursue fraud cases against Trump University? Seems like a remarkable coincidence. The audience gasped, then applauded as Colbert sat back, clearly expecting this blow to land decisively. The camera zoomed in on Bondi, catching what appeared to be genuine anger flash across her face. For a moment, the studio fell silent. The producers offstage glanced at each other nervously. This was the kind of question that typically left conservative guests stammering or changing the subject. But Pam Bondi wasn't typical. She took a slow, deliberate breath, her eyes locked on Colbert's. I've been waiting for you to go there, Stephen, she said, her voice now steel-wrapped in silk. Let me educate you and your audience on a few facts your researchers apparently missed. First, Bondi began holding up one finger as she maintained direct eye contact with Colbert. That donation was to my political committee, not to me personally. A legal campaign contribution reported with full transparency. Second, the decision not to pursue the Trump University case was made by career prosecutors in my office before any donation based on the fact that New York was already handling the case. She leaned forward slightly. But here's what your audience might find interesting. While you're implying corruption with a legal $25,000 donation, you've said nothing about the millions flowing into the Biden family from foreign sources. Where's your concern for ethics there, Stephen? The audience, previously cheering Colbert's every jab, fell unusually quiet. Colbert shifted in his chair, his prepared notes suddenly seeming insufficient. We're not talking about Biden right now, he attempted, trying to regain control of the conversation. No, we're talking about journalistic integrity and double standards, Bondi countered, her confidence visibly growing. You invited me here, implied I violated my oath, questioned my ethics, but haven't done the same rigorous examination of politicians you support. Your viewers deserve better than selective outrage. Bondi reached into her portfolio and pulled out several printed pages. Since you brought up Trump University, let's also discuss the Clinton Foundation accepting millions from countries with horrific human rights records while Hillary was Secretary of State. I have the receipts right here. She held up the documents. Would you like to review them on air? Colbert's face flushed slightly. This wasn't the defensiveness he expected. Bondi was counterpunching with facts and turning his own tactics against him. We'd need to verify those documents, Colbert said, attempting to sound dismissive, but coming across as evasive. They are from public records and mainstream media reports, Bondi replied smoothly. The same standard you just applied to me. But I understand if you need time to prepare before discussing Democrats with the same scrutiny you apply to Republicans. The audience stirred uncomfortably. This wasn't the entertainment they had come for. They were witnessing their host being methodically challenged in a way rarely seen on the show. Colbert tried to pivot. Let's get back to your current positions. You've been critical of the Justice Department's handling of I'm happy to discuss that, Bondi interrupted firmly. But I think your viewers noticed you just changed the subject when presented with inconvenient facts. That's the problem with our political discourse today. We don't apply the same standards across the board. Colbert's producer was frantically signaling from offstage, drawing a finger across his throat, the universal sign to cut this segment short. But Colbert, a professional with decades of experience, knew that abruptly ending now would only make him look worse. Fair enough, Colbert conceded with visible reluctance. You're saying there's a double standard. But you must admit the rhetoric from Trump and his supporters has been divisive. Divisive like suggesting half the country is a threat to democracy. Bondi asked, raising an eyebrow. Or divisive like calling political opponents enemies of the state. Those weren't Trump's words. They came from the current administration, she continued before Colbert could interject. Look, Americans are tired of the hypocrisy. They see inflation hurting their families, crime rising in cities, and a border crisis endangering communities. Yet, instead of solutions, they get lectures about how their concerns aren't valid or are somehow rooted in prejudice. The camera caught several audience members nodding in agreement. An unusual sight on Colbert's traditionally partisan show. The American people are smarter than political elites give them credit for. Bondi said, her voice now passionate but controlled. They see when media personalities like yourself use your platform to mock one side while insulating the other from criticism. They notice when legitimate concerns are dismissed as conspiracy theories, only to be quietly acknowledged as true months later. Colbert, now visibly uncomfortable, glanced at his watch. We're almost out of time. Yes, conveniently, Bondi noted with a knowing smile. But let me leave your viewers with this thought. You don't have to agree with me politically to recognize that healthy democracy requires honest debate and consistent principles. When we demonize those we disagree with or apply different standards based on political affiliation, we all lose. The studio had fallen into a stunned silence. Even those who disagreed with Bondi's politics could recognize that she had done something rare. She had come into hostile territory and not just survived, but commanded respect through preparation and poise. As the camera panned across, the audience, their expressions told the story, wide eyes, a few dropped jaws, and even some reluctant nods of acknowledgement. This wasn't the easy conservative takedown they had expected to witness. Colbert struggled to end on a note that wouldn't make him appear completely defeated. Well, Pam Bondi, you certainly came prepared tonight, he said, attempting to sound gracious, but coming across as strained. I respect your audience enough to give them my best, Stephen, she replied with a smile that managed to be both warm and triumphant. That's something I think we can all agree on. The American people deserve our best regardless of politics. As the show cut to commercial, the studio audience sat in stunned silence for several seconds before breaking into uncertain applause. Some clapping enthusiastically, others reluctantly joining in. Whatever their politics, they had just witnessed something unprecedented. Stephen Colbert, master of his domain, had been outmaneuvered on his own stage. Within minutes of the segment airing on the East Coast, clips of Bondi's composed takedown of Colbert began flooding social media. The hashtag #BogBondiOwns Colbert shot to #1 trending nationwide, with conservatives celebrating what many called the most satisfying 5 minutes of television this year. A clip of Bondi saying, "Americans are tired of the hypocrisy," was shared over 50,000 times in the first hour alone. Conservative commentator Buck Stone tweeted, Pam Bondi just gave a masterclass in how to handle hostile media, prepared, poised, and refused to be bullied. Take notes, Republicans. Even some liberal commentators acknowledged the unusual dynamic of the interview. Progressive journalist Glenn Greenwald tweeted, "Whatever your politics, what we just saw was rare. Someone going into the lion's den and turning the tables through sheer preparation and refusing to be intimidated." Media literacy means recognizing effective communication even from those you disagree with. By morning, the impact was unmistakable. Fox News ran segments analyzing Bondi's performance, with one host declaring, "Last night, Pam Bondi did what conservative guests have failed to do for years. She came armed with facts, remained calm under pressure, and exposed the double standards of mainstream entertainment media." CNN reluctantly covered the viral moment, framing it as a contentious exchange that has conservatives celebrating, while their panel discussed whether Colbert's team had inadequately prepared for Bondi's counteroffensive. The view counts on YouTube told the story. The official Late Show channel's clip of the interview was quickly becoming their most watched segment of the year, with the comment section filled with remarks like, "I don't even agree with her politics, but had to respect how she handled herself, and Colbert wasn't ready for someone who wouldn't be intimidated." Meanwhile, in the Late Show offices, an emergency meeting was called. Sources inside CBS later leaked that producers were reviewing their pre-inter research protocols and discussing how to handle guests who came over-prepared with counterattacks. One staffer reportedly said, "We've never had a guest turn the tables like that. It completely threw off the show's rhythm." Bondi's phone didn't stop ringing the next day. Interview requests poured in from every network, and her social media following increased by over 100,000 overnight. Conservative groups and campaigns began reaching out about speaking engagements, seeing her as someone who could effectively communicate their message, even in hostile environments. 3 days after the interview, Donald Trump himself weighed in with a Truth Social post. Pam Bondi showed the world how to handle fake news. "She's always been a fighter, smart, tough, and doesn't back down. We need more like her telling the truth about what's happening to our great country." The ripple effects extended beyond just one viral moment. Republican media training consultants began using clips from the interview as teaching examples. A GOP congressional candidate told Fox News, "I watched that exchange 5 times and took notes. That's exactly how we need to engage. Not getting defensive, not getting angry, but turning the tables with facts and exposing the double standards." Democratic strategists privately expressed concern. One anonymous advisor told Politico, "If Republicans start sending out more Bondist and fewer easy targets, shows like Colbert's lose their effectiveness as friendly territory for our messaging. We've counted on those platforms to reach younger voters with our framing of issues." The following week, Colbert himself addressed the moment briefly at the start of his show. "Last week, we had a spirited discussion with former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi that got quite a bit of attention. We stand by our questions, but we also believe in having guests with different perspectives. That's what makes America great. We can disagree without being disagreeable most of the time." His attempt at humor fell flat. The audience's response noticeably more muted than usual. Behind the scenes, bookers for late-night comedy shows began approaching conservative guests differently, with one producer anonymously telling the New York Post, "The Bondi effect is real. We're now asking ourselves, is this person going to be a Pam Bondi before booking? No one wants their host to end up in that position." For everyday Americans watching from home, the exchange represented something more fundamental than just politics. In an era of carefully controlled messaging and predictable media narratives, they had witnessed an authentic moment, a reminder that prepared conviction could still break through rehearsed talking points and laugh tracks. A month later, viewership data revealed an interesting pattern. While Colbert's ratings temporarily spiked due to curiosity about the viral moment, they subsequently dropped by nearly 15% among independent voters. Focus groups revealed that some viewers who had previously enjoyed the show's political commentary now saw it differently, with one participant saying, "I can't unsee how he tried to dismiss her when she challenged him. It made me question how many other guests get that treatment when they don't fit the narrative." Pam Bondi leveraged her newfound prominence to advance causes she cared about. Her appearances discussing border security and fentanyl trafficking now reached larger audiences, and she was increasingly invited to forums that had previously featured only progressive voices. When asked about the Colbert moment in subsequent interviews, she consistently redirected that was just one night of television. "I'm more concerned about the issues affecting American families every day." 6 months later, journalism schools were using the exchange as a case study in interview tactics and counter-tactics. A Columbia journalism professor told students, "Whatever your political leanings, this interview demonstrates why preparation matters and why challenging your own assumptions before an interview is essential." Bondi succeeded because she anticipated the attacks and had factual counterpoints ready. The legacy of that one interview extended far beyond a single viral moment. It had become a template for effective communication across political divides, a warning to media personalities about the dangers of underestimating guests, and a reminder that in an age of carefully curated political theater, authentic exchanges still had the power to break through and resonate with the American people. For Pam Bondi herself, the most significant impact wasn't the fame or the viral moment. It was proving that conservative voices could effectively challenge the prevailing narrative when armed with facts, conviction, and unshakable composure. As she later told a group of law students at her alma mater, the truth doesn't need anger or volume to be powerful. It just needs someone willing to speak it clearly, especially when it's not popular in the room. The nation had witnessed something rare in modern political discourse, a genuine moment of truth-telling that transcended partisan lines and reminded everyone that respectful but firm debate was still possible in America. If you found this breakdown of the Colbert-Bondi confrontation enlightening, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis of the political moments mainstream media won't cover. Hit that notification bell so you'll be the first to know when we upload new content exposing media bias and celebrating those who stand up for truth regardless of the consequences. Leave a comment below telling us what other political showdowns you'd like us to explore next.